Hello and welcome to Children of the Void.
Catherine Phillips, who is better known as Baby Kate, went missing in 2011. She was presumed dead, though her body has never been found and there is no evidence that she was murdered.
Though her father was charged and convicted with her murder, it has never been proven that he killed her. Theories as to Baby Kate's fate and whereabouts abound.
One theory has it that she was sold into black market adoption brokers. As it stands, Baby Kate resides somewhere within the void.
Our guest, Tom Rotta, is an expert on the case. We speak with him now.
So, everyone, welcome Tom.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hi there. How are you guys?
We're not doing too bad. So,
yes. Thanks for welcoming me onto your program, Rachel and Michelle.
the case we're going to be covering today is the case of Baby Kate, aka Catherine Phillips. This case is rather old. I believe it started. Her disappearance was back in 2001. Am I correct in that?
That would be 2011.
Oh, you know what? This ages me. Ew. Yeah, thank you. 2011. So I know some of our listeners might not know a lot about this case. And Tom, I believe, what is your background and why do you know about this case and why is it close to your heart?
Well, it takes place in my town, my own hometown here. It took place roughly 10 years ago there, and I at the time there was running a local website there, which I call the Langton Torch, and I do follow up on some of the news there. I'm more of an alternative news site, not a real member of the mainstream media or anything like that. But I did look into news there, and this case is a real interesting case, and it started off pretty interesting, but it's gotten even more interesting as it went.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. Not to make similarities, but the new case out with what was her name, Michelle? The one that just was found.
Oh my goodness.
For the worst. The biggest national case right now.
I'm blanking. You called me. It's on the spot.
Yeah, the one.
Yes, with the boyfriend who.
The one where the
Gabby.
couple went. Yeah, Gabby. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. So it's in my hometown, right close to me. So I can imagine, like with this case, in your case, being from your hometown, you had a lot of media coverage for this, being it's from where you are.
Yes, this, of course, was reported on locally, but it really branched out into regionally and then even nationally shortly after the disappearance. And it was because there was a disappearing, there was a 4-month-old infant that was gone missing, and no one other than maybe 1 or 2 people knew where that baby was.
So as far as the story as a whole, for some of our listeners who may be new and haven't heard this story before, can you give kind of a quick rundown of the events that took place surrounding Baby Kate's disappearance?
All right, I can do that. It's I'll give you pretty much the official report on what is alleged to have happened, and what has, they officially tried the eventual person on for this particular case. June 29th, 2011, when Baby Kate went missing. It was originally reported into the police by her mother, Ariel Cortland, who said that the father of the young 4-month-old had just drove off with her, and what happened, according to official reports, was that he drove at least over to Wendy's. They have the receipts from his order for that particular place that day there, and he got an order to go.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know
And
that.
it was just a a regular combo meal or nothing, nothing for the kid or nothing.
Great.
Reportedly, he would eventually have a confession letter they writ well after he was incarcerated in prison for a crime there, but I'll wait on that one to to comment on that. That was I don't think that necessarily is 100% accurate, his confession letter, so to speak. But he did stop at the Wendy's. He did pick up a meal. That's pretty much factual. And then between then and when he got to his parents' place where he was living at, nothing is really too much known other than he did stop by a fireworks sales. This is right before, about a week before Independence Day, and so there was a lot of firework vendors out there. And this was just a roadside thing that was on the other side of his parents.
And this was after the disappearance, after the baby was missing? This happened right after?
Yeah, this not too far after. Was the baby went missing around 1:20.
Okay.
Well, actually, he got out of Wendy's a little after 1:20, and then he stopped at the fireworks vendors at a time estimated to be between 2:30 and 3 o'clock.
That changes my course of thought completely.
Okay.
The fact that he stopped by a firework vendor. Okay.
Yes, yeah, it is rather stranger that he was supposedly either abandoning the baby or killing the baby at that point and dropping it off somewhere.
Somewhere in a safe place, right? Is that what eventually he said?
Yeah, well, they have an idea of where he might have went based on some forensics.
Okay.
But
we'll get into that because I have some questions about that. It's what Michelle and I both do.
Okay. And well, he did. He stopped this fireworks vendor, which was actually beyond where he needed to go to get to home there. So he did go out of his way to do something, and that he never disclosed where he went between Wendy's and before he got to the fireworks vendor. So there's roughly about an hour and about 20 minutes that is unknown what he was doing. The actual distance that he would have had to have traveled to get to the fireworks vendor and go back to home would be roughly 28 to 30 miles.
Wow.
Minimum.
That's a lot.
And so that doesn't leave him a whole lot of time to actually go into some out of the way area and dispose of a body.
No, it doesn't. Am I correct in that during that time, I believe I read that he also, his cell phone was turned off during that hour and a half when he was gone? Yes.
The phones are interesting in itself.
Okay.
He actually, the mother left her cell phone in the car there because apparently she was thinking that he was going to take her elsewhere. And so she had that along with some baby supplies out in the car still. And when he ran off there, he tried to give him a call through her phone and through his phone because she went to a neighbor's and started using her phone to give him a call. Yeah, and so so both phones, both her phone and his phone, were in the car, and she was trying to get hold of both of them. And they very slowly thereafter, and they did forensics in court about the cell phones, and that's kind of interesting in itself. I could go a little bit astray on that one, but
I would love for you to go astray. Were you in court? I think I read that you, in one of your articles, that you were actually in the courtroom. Were you in the courtroom during the trial?
Well, there was eventually two trials that took place against Sean Phillips. The first was for unlawful imprisonment, and that took place in April of 2012.
Okay. Yes.
In that particular case, I believe I was in court one time, but most of the time I had a proxy person in there, or someone I knew that was reporting to me and taking notes.
Awesome.
Well, I was commenting on it, but I don't have a real great thing there. I do have transcripts of some of the days in that particular courtroom stuff there, so I've used that for that. The second trial, the murder trial that happened in 2016, I did go to every day except I did miss one for that, and I had a proxy then too.
That's amazing. I'm not amazing. Sorry, we say amazing, but we do true crime.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, fascinating to be in that caliber of a case at that time, to be in that courtroom. I can't imagine what that felt like.
Yeah, and the nice thing was, at least in the second murder trial, it wasn't too explosive at that point. Even though there was a lot of various media in there, the local people didn't necessarily swarm to the courtroom there. There was still empty spots in the court.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, and it was you could that was perhaps made possible because some of the media that were reporting on the actual trial there were actually doing live feeds from the trial. It was, the judge allowed that particular stuff to happen.
So it wasn't like what Michelle and I mentioned in the Kaylee Anthony trial, where there were practically tickets being sold, and we had said how the media had made such a spectacle of it that it almost was interfered with the actual trial itself and the facts that were presented, or even trying to have a fair case. So I'm glad that it wasn't overwhelming.
Yeah, if compare the two trials that were held for Sean Phillips there, I would say the first one was a little bit more of a hullabaloo than the second one there. But neither one really. They had a lot of local interest, definitely, but they were held during the day there, and there's a lot of people out working in the day, and there was they were expecting there to be swarming the courtroom with a whole bunch of media types.
Yeah. So a couple of questions. Just your aspect from the case, Michelle.
Oh, well, can I continue on with the cell phones just a little bit more?
Absolutely. Please dive into anything you want to. I want you to dive into anything you would like to, please. Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, he turned off the phones shortly after that, probably at Wendy's. They because the forensics of that shows they turned the cell phones off right around then. And that looks a little bit suspicious because maybe he went someplace and didn't want to be found through his cell phone. And they can do a lot of things with cell phone records to locate a person. And so. And turning them off like that looks suspicious, but he actually, his line of defense for that was that she was kept on calling him and not letting go, and so he had in the past turned off his phone just to be not irritated by her phone calls.
And she was at the apartment still at this time. Is that what
she was still at the apartment trying to talk to the police and her friend through her phone there, and all this other stuff, and then that there, and by the time the police went to his house looking for him, which was again is around 16 miles away from where the abduction happened, by the time they got there, he still wasn't at home, and interestingly, just about 15 minutes after they drove off, he came back home.
Wow.
Now, I've always speculated there that I think he may have came home at that particular point, saw that there was police in his driveway.
Yeah.
And because of the makeup of the thing there, he could, it's a very rural area. He could have drove around to the back end of the property unseen and kind of wait out to see when they left. And so I believe he might have came back after that to get there.
So that's actually a good question. Explain to us the dynamic of that town. Is it a rural town? Is it population wise? Ludington, is it kind of a rural community or foresty? Kind of, what's the layout?
Ludington is a town of about 8,000 people, a little over 8,000. It itself there has, it has nice things like Wendy's and Walmart's and even a Meijer.
A Meijer's, yep.
Yeah, and so we have, we have those, but where he lived was 16 miles to the north and east there, just about 6 miles north of nearby Scottville, which is a town of 1,200. And so, he's living out there in the sticks.
Okay.
With his parents. And he, by the time he got out there, there was, a little over an hour that is unaccounted for, and where he couldn't be tracked with the phones. Mm-hmm. And so they were able to track him about as far as Wendy's with the phones here, but then they got shut off. And one of the interesting things with the phones was they did do enough as far as a warrant search for the phone records for his phone, but they only went back so far with her phone, which is kind of suspicious in my book there, since the last person who's seen baby Kate, other than the two principals of Ariel Cortland and Sean Phillips, was her grandma the previous night, who had babysat her until she picked baby Kate up around 10 o'clock.
And that was mom's mom or dad's mom?
Yeah, that was the mom's mom.
Mom's mom, okay.
Yeah, and another interesting thing there. So she there was like 12 hours that was unaccounted for her before the baby went missing, and so I would think that the police would have at least wanted to go back through her phone records too, just to make sure that there hadn't been nothing done before that, just to check out her own veracity.
So the only phones that they went through were Ariel and Sean's phones.
Yes, and they only went through Ariel's phone up past the time when Sean had the phone. Okay,
well that right there is a problem for me, but okay, we should proceed. Wow.
Well, there is a lot of speculation that the mother was at least an accomplice in whatever happened here, and that it's a fairly strong contingent of people, because she, for one reason or another, there she wasn't necessarily all that well thought of in the area.
Okay. Interesting thing to get into there, and that's Ariel's mother.
No, that's Ariel is the mother. Baby Kate is the daughter.
Right. I was saying, okay, so you're talking about Ariel. Understood. And where is her? They had another daughter, an older daughter. Where was she during all of this?
The older daughter was in Sean's custody, and his mother was actually babysitting during the time that most of the events were happening. She was 4 or 5 years old at the time, and one of the interesting things regarding that is that in the record there, it was revealed that Sean, he installed a sprinkler system that morning there, and so that his older daughter would be able to play in. And this becomes an interesting part of another deep dive, I guess it would be there, with his shoes, because that became a very important part of the trial and the
trace evidence, right? The foliage. Did they do some testing on the
foliage?
Very good.
I'm from
Very
Florida. Good. I say foliage. Okay. You guys are from Ohio and Michigan. We say foliage. foliage. But yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tomato.
There you go,
We
Tom.
understand.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Well, anyway, so the shoes did play a part, and part of that was the fact that the shoes that they looked at had some soil on it that was distinctive. They also had some plants and other inorganic stuff on the bottoms that had clung onto that, and they used that later for trying to figure out where he might have went. The shoes have had a variety of forensic materials that were studied by a couple of Michigan State University professors. There was a Professor Crum that came up, and he was looking into the. It's kind of funny that his name was Crum, and he was looking at soil on the bottom of the shoes.
I'm sorry, I almost just laughed out loud saying that. Great.
But yeah, he testified in the original trial there that the shoes had been in some sort of swampy area, and he gave an indication of what sort of soil type it would be at, and where it would where it could have been and where it wouldn't have been in the possible places where Sean could have went, because in about the hour that he would have been able to get somewhere, that limits the actual type of terrain that you might go to.
Right.
And so he testified on that, and they were able to limit some of the search areas where they might be able to find her. And the other one, Dr. Tulusky, and so the plant doctor was able to kind of narrow it down a little bit too, as far as where he could have been with the shoes that they had looked at. But I think one of the main problems with the shoes thing there, and this is going into that particular deep dive, is that the video of Sean, who went earlier that day to the hospital for paternity testing on baby Kate, no less,
right,
had been filmed in the lobby of the hospital, and he was wearing a certain types of shoe. It was actually called a Seedless Shoe. That was the brand name.
Are you kidding? Is that a joke, or are you serious?
That's totally serious. The name of the
Okay.
shoe was Seedless.
Oh, wow.
And he went in there, and he had his paternity test, and he came out, and you can see the shoes in the footage there. You later see him. I was really interested in this case, sir, and I got the footage of him being at being interrogated at the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm.
And there you can see him wearing a totally different pair of shoes. Now, the interesting thing is that the shoes that they got the seeds and the soil off were neither of those two shoes.
They were a totally
different brand.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's this is the interesting thing about shoes that day is that you would figure that if he was wearing the Seedless shoes to the hospital, that when he drove off and did what he needed to do there, he'd still have those shoes on, since he wasn't home at that point. Normally, guys don't have extra shoes in their cars just dangling around, and they never found a pair of shoes in his cars anyway. So, guys out, does what he does, comes back home, and of course he could have switched shoes at that point, particularly if they were wet or something, but he switches shoes and he gets interrogated with these other pair of shoes, and then they search his placer, and they find what they consider as a little bit moist shoes that have these seeds on. And now the interesting thing about that is that it's more than likely, in my opinion, that those were the shoes that he used to set up the sprinkler system earlier, rather than the ones that he was wearing at the hospital, and then went and perhaps found a place for baby Kate.
That makes sense because it was wet. Yeah, so he, changed shoes because your shoes are wet. I can understand that.
Right, and the interesting thing is that the Seedless Shoes never reappeared in the literature there, as far as being introduced into court and anything like that. So you wonder, it's not.
Where's that pair of
It's not
shoes?
likely that he had those extra pairs of shoes in his thing there and that. So I think he may have changed his shoes there, but I think he might have got rid of his Seedless Shoes somewhere.
Sounds about right.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a quick question too. So with the theory on him switching shoes, I just find it interesting that if we had evidence through video of his interrogations and being at the paternity testing site that he was wearing different shoes, did law enforcement, when they searched his home, do any, particle testing on the different shoes he had at his place? Or was that something that they potentially overlooked because they were more focused on finding Kate at that point?
I would suggest probably the latter, because they weren't necessarily gathering evidence for a trial at that particular point, and what they had was, what they did gather up the shoe there that they thought might have been the problem there, but they didn't at that particular point probably have the hospital footage of showing him with the other shoes.
In regards to evidence, because they were dealing with this as a missing persons case essentially at the very beginning. Do you believe go ahead?
Yeah, they didn't have the actual hospital footage at the time when they were looking into his house and gathering evidence, so they wouldn't know necessarily what shoes he was wearing at that particular point when he was in the hospital.
Right.
That also might not have surfaced until much later, because it seemed like most of the extra stuff they were gathering was done a bit later, as far as the investigators in the case.
Right, because he wasn't tried for quite a while, correct?
Yeah, as noted, the abduction happened in June of 2011, and the trial didn't actually take place till April of 2012.
So what forensic anomalies could have been missed or were not, taken during that time, and were things thoroughly searched well enough? I don't know your local police department or your investigators or detectives, but I mean, obviously we've known quite a few cases that have been blundered for lack of, good detective work or forensic work. Or
I think there was a little bit of lack of rigor there at first there. They did the major things of, basically impounding his car and getting stuff that might be incriminating back at his house that he might have dropped off when he dropped by there before the police came and arrested him. But the preliminary trial took place later on in July, probably around 3 or 4 weeks after the disappearance. Few of this stuff about the soil and the plants were not even discussed during that particular period of time.
I would imagine.
That was developed more later in the year. I believe I've seen the records there. I think they started working on that around November or December. Some of the, they basically had the interviews with, Ariel and Sean, as much as he would say, and other bits of evidence, but they didn't really go too much into the deep dive of the the trial, the what would come out at the trial eventually with phone records and such.
Right. So I had a quick question for you. I read that at the time of his arrest, Sean had baby Kate's clothes in his pocket. Did he ever give like a reason behind this, or did they ever do any testing on the clothing to see if there was any trace evidence or anything of that nature?
Yeah, that's correct. They did find her clothes in his cargo pants that he was wearing that day. The odd thing is, of course,
That is the odd thing, first of all, but okay.
that is odd in its own face.
That
But
is
the odd thing is
literally
that
just odd.
he had roughly 20 minutes or so before he called the police and they arrived, and he could have easily gotten rid of that evidence from his pants if he wanted to.
That's interesting. That's weird.
Yeah,
so there was no. So I'm thinking because they weren't treating it as a homicide or anything, what's the word I'm looking for?
Malicious
happening. Thank you. Malicious happening. If he said he pulled the car seat out in that theory and that she had followed the car seat, which I don't believe, was blood tested for in the car? Was blood tested for on the clothes? Was there any, what kind of other forensic evidence besides the material, the flora and fauna that they tested on the shoes? Was there anything? Was there any evidence, physical?
yeah, if you're looking for very solid evidence, there never was a whole lot. The actual, most of the stuff is circumstantial at best. Or you have the clothes that he had in his cargo pants there. Those could be explained away in certain things,
A
as
spare
far
pair
as
of clothes.
yeah,
I mean,
he was the father of
yeah.
Was the father of a baby and all that, and the odd, the more incriminating thing was that he did have that in his pants, and he also had the baby seat in his trunk.
Oh.
And along with the baby bag. And so, that makes it look suspicious there, because both the mother and a witness to them fighting earlier that day at the apartment she was at,
Mm-hmm.
saw him drive off with the baby seat in his back seat.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of those circumstances and situations there made them arrest him and take him into custodial interrogation sort of advancement.
So, go ahead. No, go, Michelle.
Oh, okay. So you had mentioned that there was someone who had witnessed baby Kate's parents, Sean and Ariel, fighting the day that she went missing, and that, the day everything took place, the father was going to take a paternity test at a local hospital. What exactly kind of relationship did Ariel and Sean have? And was there a factor of abuse in the relationship? What was it about their relationship and about baby Kate's existence as a whole that really, kind of lit a fire with this case and made it so fascinating? I hate saying it that way. Interesting, like how does all this tie together? Like, was the background information that they found regarding their relationship and their feelings towards their daughter, was that enough to convict Sean eventually?
No, that's a very good question. The feelings that Sean had towards his daughter, baby Kate, was a lot less than what he had for his older daughter. He kind of accepted his older daughter, but pretty much denied the paternity of the younger daughter, and probably thought that it was likely his, but didn't want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
the mother, and he's, kind of in the record for saying this at times, or that, he had a hard time tolerating her, to put it nicely.
The baby or the mom or both?
The mom.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
he, I believe, Ariel had said that when on the times or that he has been with the baby Kate, and the times when I think he's actually babysat baby Kate, those times he's very good with her. But he did not want to accept that being the father of baby Kate.
So I'm wondering, in researching, I understand that he did a stint, I believe it was in the Coast Guard. Was this previous to baby Kate being born? And if so,
well, I know he was in.
Yeah.
He was in the military.
Mhm.
I don't remember if it was the Coast Guard or not there, but he was.
I could be
he was
wrong. I'm
also-
sorry if I'm wrong.
I believe he was in the active reserves at that point for some branch of the military.
Because I'm thinking maybe if he went away, that maybe he would question if the baby was his if he were not there. I don't know the timeline though. It was just a crazy, one of those weird
Right.
rabbit holes we went on.
One speculation that Rachel and I had regarding, a reason behind his, lack of paternal instinct for his daughter Kate could have possibly been that if he was involved actively in the military at the time of her conception, that maybe there was some unfaithfulness by Ariel, and that's what ultimately led to the paternity test in the first place. It's one thing to love a daughter when it's yours biologically, but when it's the product of, an affair or someone else, it's harder to accept that. We didn't know if that was possibly one motive for Kate's disappearance.
Yeah, there was. They did, I believe, even Sean admitted in his limited interrogation there that they had an on-again, off-again relationship there, and he was thinking that that baby Kate wasn't his because there was just a very limited possibility that on the timeline there that would be the case.
Very
it
tumultuous.
turns out that the paternity case, paternity test, which he had just done that morning there, they weren't able to get baby Kate's own DNA sample for that, and so they basically used some stuff from her clothes, I believe, some DNA from that, and they were able to determine that he was the father.
Right.
And so I think there was enough friction between the two there that he could have done something drastic to get rid of the baby, but it's difficult to actually figure in what their frame of mind was at that particular time.
So
she was
also,
going through a very hard time herself.
Yeah, and I read that also he almost talked her into giving the baby up for adoption, and she had considered that at one point. That's speculation. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but my thought went to, would she have, I don't know, was there any speculation of her having anything to do with this, perhaps to keep him because he didn't want the baby? Or, if she's considering putting the baby up for adoption to make a man happy. I don't know how controlling he was. I don't know maybe if they had a very tumultuous relationship, if he was controlling, if he was narcissistic. My mind kind of went there just as a perhaps.
No, there was a lot of speculation because of all the various variables that couldn't be really assembled even following an investigation.
Right. There's a lot of variables, yeah.
So they went to the DHS office to consider adoption alternatives. So it is, quite, one of the some of the speculation that goes out there is that there was a black market adoption that's out there.
That was one of our questions.
Yeah. Was there any actual evidence that they had researched adoption through the black market?
Was it ever looked into?
It was. It was looked into. He rather famously, while he was in local jail there, he had a note that he left in one of his pants pockets that they found when he was taking a shower, and it had interesting writing on it there that looked as if he had been trying to contact people to get adoption, through either the internet or else. So they did look into that. They kind of dismissed it because there was no other. They did have his computer also for forensics, and they did find some adoption. They did find some adoption stuff there, but nothing off the white market, let's say.
Okay, that's interesting. I wonder how deep dive. I wonder how thoroughly the computer was checked. It's just that there's so many questions and things that you want to know during this investigation. It's just
and there's so many different for the speculators, and you guys are probably speculators of the highest order, but you can go in elaborate different ways in this particular case there, and some of the evidence will back your branch that you might want to go on. You might think that the official story is totally correct, what they eventually charged him with, but some of that stuff doesn't seem all that accurate there, and so you might go on a different path, and you can take this black market adoption path and still find nothing in the existing evidence to really distort it, maybe make it a little bit less likely in probability, but not totally refute it.
Well, that's why we're talking to you, though. We do want to know more, not as factual as we can get, so we can try to give listeners some kind of a determination on where to go, possibly what actually happened. But diving into all these possibilities is kind of where our head goes, and where other people who listen to this kind of stuff, that's where we all go when we listen to these cases. We're overthinking because we're so into true crime, and like, oh, what about this? What about this? So that's why we ask these questions, just to kind of get them out of the way, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we would all be hopeful there that she was given to a caring mother and father, because obviously she was coming from ones that weren't all that caring.
That glimmer of hope that maybe she was adopted and she's alive and happy somewhere. That would be fantastic. So gotta ask.
Right. Well, and I mean, just the fact that they never found a body. No one can actually prove without, a shadow of a doubt that she is even deceased. What are the most common or plausible theories, in your opinion, about her possible whereabouts today? If she is still alive, was the black market option honestly as crazy as everyone thought it was? Or, where did she go?
Or do we think maybe he bought fireworks and burnt her body somewhere? Because that's kind of what I think at this point.
Or maybe he met, like, one thing I speculated while listening to that aspect was, maybe he met families from out of town, because, like, in my state, you're not legally allowed to buy fireworks at those, like, because we have a lot of stands with illegal things, and you're not allowed to buy, as an Ohio resident in Ohio, those kinds of fireworks. You have to come from out of state to get them.
Oh, that's hilarious. We are so poor.
So it's like, how do we know that he didn't meet a family at one of these out of state places, drop the baby off, and then go their separate ways, and then conveniently, I was going to get fireworks anyway. This is where our mind goes.
Yeah, and the various hospital camera footages there, also lends me to believe there that the Ariel's recollection of events might not be all that good, and that there might be something that happened about an hour before, within the hour before the actual disappearance was called in, and that's kind of deep diving there, but we have Ariel's neighbor at the Birch Lake Apartments there, claiming that they were up there arguing. At that particular time there, he saw just Sean go out to the car and with the baby seat and put it in his back seat. Ariel at that particular time was just pretty much yelling at him from above there, and he was a little bit upset because he was woke up from sleep himself. The neighbor was by their arguing in that, and so he kind of remembers it. He just doesn't remember the exact time, but when you place it in there, it has to be before the time he left, and it has to be a time where he didn't leave with Ariel with him. And so there's a little bit confusion there, because if that was the case, there was about an hour in there where he was driving around with at least a baby seat, possibly a baby in there, I don't know.
Right.
And then he comes back later on through the hospital, and the way this is for the baby Kate aficionado there, but they had certain streets closed at that time for construction, and there was only certain ways you could really maneuver your car there, and he didn't go through the hospital to go down towards the DHS like you'd almost expect. You'd have to drive way out of the way otherwise to get there. And so you wonder where he drove off to at that particular time, because it had to be before he eventually drove off.
Yeah, before he, oh God. So I can't fathom at this point in time why he wouldn't tell the family where she is. I know that's going way to but that question, what is keeping him from saying something? Why? Unless you're that much of a narcissist.
Yeah, you almost have to look at that as part of the speculation that you have to do there. Why wouldn't he admit at some point there where if it was an accidental killing like he tries to say in the letter?
Exactly, the letter. We haven't really deep dived into the letter, because that was interesting. There was two, wasn't there two letters?
There was the jail letter, which basically indicated that they might have did some research into adoption policy. That might have been a ruse, but it's been felt by the police around here to say that he was trying to make it so that he didn't murder the baby. So he put that in his thing there just so that he wouldn't get blamed for murder later on.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then that was when he was in jail, a local jail there. And then after his trial, and he went to prison in a couple of different places, I think there. The second trial had a colorful character in there. I forget his name right now, but he was basically. Was
that one of his the guy who was bunked with him, who said that he had said that he could bury or kill somebody and get away with it or something like that?
Yeah, it was. I think his name was Death Row something. It wasn't Death Row Jethro, which would be cool, but it was someone who went by the nickname Death Row is his first name. Yeah, I just can't recall what his last name was, but he testified in court that he was relaying there that Sean had admitted things to him. And
all signs to me are not good.
Yeah. But yeah, that yeah, the second the prison letter came out, and it was basically what was a confession letter, and he's explaining to Ariel in this letter what happened that day. And that letter was eventually used against him in his murder trial to claim that he had some sort of murderous impulse to at least kill baby Kate.
So I wonder, with that letter, I'm trying to why they went for second degree, because he didn't mean to.
From what I remember, because I read the letter that he wrote, the second one, it stated something along the lines of him being upset and angry at Ariel, and he thought that she had left the car seat behind in the vehicle, sort of as a way to get him to come back to drop it off to her. And he was so frustrated at the arguing and just, all the hostility, he didn't want to be around her, that he attempted to rip the car seat out of the back seat of his vehicle, not realizing that baby Kate was in there, and basically threw the car seat out with baby Kate in it, and didn't state whether she was injured or actually killed upon impact with the ground, but basically insinuated that she was severely hurt in the situation. And then he just sort of froze up. And that's why he didn't really do anything. He didn't attempt to help her, but he also didn't attempt to call the police. And then everything, the way he was explaining it in the letter almost sounded like if someone were having an out-of-body experience. He said he was essentially watching himself do these things, but he felt like he wasn't even in control of the situation. I don't know if this is like a psychological coping mechanism or what, how to justify it, but the way the letter was written, that's the way I interpreted it.
You'd have to, because I'm sorry, you don't pick up a car seat, especially that type of car seat, because I saw the car seat, and it's one of those back, Michelle, those back-facing car seats.
Right.
You would know the baby's in the damn car seat. You're not getting away with that nonsense.
Yeah.
With me.
That's why I looked at the confession letter myself there, and I he has a fairly small car, and I took my own small car, and I had a backward facing car seat just like him there, and tried to figure out, okay, how could exactly this happen? How could he reach in and knock the car seat over and get something beyond where his legs would be blocking the door as he opens it up?
Did you really do this yourself?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I'm a very big believer in the scientific method.
Absolutely.
and so I took a look at this there, and I tried using all sorts of force vectors there, and I couldn't imagine anybody being able to actually get a baby out like that. Even on the, even if the probability was, it just seemed like there was almost 100% probability that would never happen that way, that you couldn't get a baby to fall out and not hit your legs or anything else on the way.
Well, and another thing too would be that if, the kind of impact it would take to not only kill an infant, but to throw a car seat on the ground to, cause those kind of injuries, there would have been some sort of damage done to the car seat, so that when law enforcement saw it in the trunk, they should have noticed right away, hey, this has like scuffs on it, and it looks like, it has road rash essentially. So makes you wonder.
Right. Yeah. The place where it was, of course, taken out was the Wendy's parking lot, and that would be paved, of course. And even if, if a baby did actually hit the ground at that particular spot, it's, I believe it's been said there that, babies can fall like that and survive fairly better than what a regular person might be able to do if they fell, because of all the softness of their bones and everything else.
Well, especially if they're in a car seat.
I haven't actually did that scientifically processed.
Yeah, we haven't done that. We haven't done that testing. But we know that.
That's why I'm learning to understand there that a baby is fairly resilient there as far as that from, just a standard fall.
Absolutely. That's a big.
Those car seats are also designed to take those kinds of impacts, especially in, motor vehicle accidents. And It's not like the baby was larger than the car seat itself to where if it was flung and even landed upside down, the baby, and now unless the baby wasn't strapped in, that
Do
would
we
be.
know if the baby was strapped in?
Well, that's a good question. According to Ariel's testimony, and she was, kind of left it open there, when they went to the DHS together, she had gotten out of the car there and went to undo the baby there, and then they discussed things and decided not to do it. Mm-hmm. And she never says anything about attaching the car seat there, and she had detached it to get the baby out, but she doesn't say anything about that in her testimony. Later on, when when they go back to her place, and she says that, she's going to get her stroller up there. She says at that particular point there, she goes into the back seat and undoes the car seat once again in preparation for getting the baby out. And so apparently she must have reattached it. If that was true, she must have reattached it at the DHS office.
Okay, so she had apparently reattached the safety belt. Yeah,
from her second testimony there, she did say that she undid it when she got back to the Birch Lake apartment address, which was her home, and then she went up to get her stroller.
Why would she undo? Okay, so were they leaving? Were they staying there at that point?
She had made an indication because I believe he said something about having some things to do today, and I didn't really necessarily specify that he didn't have time to carry her around everywhere, and so she said, okay, well, I will just go get my car seat out, and she went up. She went in the back, undid, and then went up to the car seat there. And according to Sean, I believe in the in some letter, maybe the actual confession letter, he thought, it wasn't a confession letter, that he thought that she had taken baby Kate at that particular point. That wasn't the confession letter, wasn't it? I seem to remember that was.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because as a mother, and Michelle, I'm sure you can agree with me, there's absolutely never in my life have I gone to undo my child's buckle in their car seat and then leave to go get a stroller and come back and get them. Have you?
No, my kid's too wiggly. There's no way.
You wouldn't do that?
No.
You wouldn't do that. That's not normal. That is
no,
not
and
normal.
it's not safe either. That's
no,
the big
it's not.
thing.
It's just that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You wouldn't do that. That makes no sense.
Yeah, it does seem rather strange in both situations there that she did that and didn't say in either cases that she restrapped
or did she
the baby. So yeah, it's very strange there because it doesn't match the neighbor's account of what happened either there, because that would have taken place after he looked out.
Damn, that's deep. That gets really sticky.
Yeah, and that's why many people in our locality around Langton and that there are a little bit skeptical of the official line of events being the actual true and correct things of what happened. It's often said there that it's pretty much that they wouldn't be able to convict Sean on anything without having Ariel be able to testify against him. And since Sean wasn't talking
at all,
Ariel, of course, had free throws at Sean, and so she took him.
So are there any theories around your town that people have come up with, or any, weird things that maybe we don't know about, that speculations about what happened, or where maybe possibly the baby could be at this point?
Well, yeah, and so they went up and they did a very big organized search at this place called the Lemke Drain area,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the scientists from Michigan State, and they had probably about 60 other people that were basically in the plant field, and they went out and checked for an afternoon this whole area, and didn't really find anything.
Nothing, just nothing.
Right.
There's so little evidence, I think, because of the time frame from which the disappearance happened to when investigations started, that
Yeah, well, in a way, it's the actual small amount of time between when he left Wendy's, apparently with receipt. They had a time on it, and by the time he got home there, you have
yes.
a small period of time where there's actually, he couldn't have went that far really to dispose of a body.
He couldn't have gone far, right? You're right. So it had to have been in a certain area of miles. You can only go so. You're right, and that gives you a kind of a grid, I suppose, for investigators.
Right. He couldn't really get too far out of the county, and if he did, he wouldn't have had any time to dispose of the body in any sort of out of the way place. So it has to be right in our county that she was put, if it was done during that particular time period. And if again, there's always the black market baby possibility, and there's also other theories that maybe there was the only person that seen baby Kate between 10 p.m. the previous night and to the next afternoon there, which is a period of about 16 hours, is Ariel. And I don't think Sean, in his testimony and interrogation, I don't think he even admitted to seeing Kate during the time there. So you're effectively only having one person see her during that whole particular time. And so some speculate that the mother might have had something to do with it. And if you look into the records, her mother actually, this would be Ariel's mother, actually suggested they look into I believe it was the Washington Avenue Bridge, see where she might have been thrown into the water at that particular point.
Her own mother said that.
Yeah, she was suspicious that she might have had something to do with it.
Wow, that says
something.
something.
Though she didn't say that at court, she had speculated that to police and stuff before, her daughter pretty much came the prime witness for the prosecution.
Well, it bothers me as well in her testimony, and then after Sean was sentenced, that she showed very little emotion and was joyful when he was sentenced. I just can't. I know everyone deals with grief differently. I understand that. It's just very hard for me as a mother to understand not having emotion about my 4-month-old baby being missing.
Yeah, many other locals, particularly women, has the same idea as you there. She didn't seem to be reacting appropriately. And
I hate putting that out there because I don't want to put that on, people deal with things differently, but you just kind of get a sense. I don't know. It just
Yeah,
seems,
you know, and again, there is not a universal thing there. You know, some would say that, well, you know, you can't act appropriately all the time there. You almost have to, you know, relax a little bit there and that there and,
right.
you know, her action. You know, I don't necessarily hold her much to account for her demeanor and actions and certain things there. You know, that I'm sure a lot is going through her mind, and so I won't
Right.
hold that necessarily against her in that particular situation. But you know, there are a lot of people around here that thinks that, you know, she has something to do with it. And,
Did they use
you know,
cadaver dogs at all to search?
that's a good question there, and I don't know for sure there. I haven't seen that in the police report. They never did, at least. I got the police report, which was a task in itself.
I bet.
You know, it's a nice 6-page report there, and when I asked for it, they asked the city of Langton, which was the people that were doing it, they asked for $2,500 for it.
What?
And $2,500 for a FOIA request for a police report.
Isn't that public record?
Yeah.
$2,500.
Yeah, that was it struck me as rather odd. And you know, they wanted to bill me for 100 hours of a detective going through it and taking out the
redacting.
The part. Yeah, redacting.
Okay,
and
wow, very interesting. Okay.
When I eventually sued the city there to get that knocked down, and I got basically for free, there was only a few redactions in the actual police report.
So you did? Did you end up paying? Oh, you didn't. Thank God you didn't pay, because I was going to be real.
Yeah, I just paid for court, and I did get that money back when I won. So.
Well, I'd start a GoFundMe for you. Trust me.
Yeah, well, it was, you know, this was, you know, if I could see them being a little bit hesitant right after the, you know, while the investigation was still hot, but I'd made this request about 6 years after the actual disappearance, and there was really no reason to say that we have an ongoing investigation at that point. It's pretty much a cold case at that point.
Yeah, what are you hiding? And why weren't there cadaver dogs put out there?
That's a good question. It didn't show up in the Langton police report. I don't know whether I can't for certain say that the Mason County Sheriff's Office or the state police, Michigan State Police, didn't do something like that. It would have been a good idea.
Absolutely.
They did have limited areas to really search, and they had several areas that were hinted at that they searched. One was around his house. One was actually in an area that a couple areas where the pings from the cell phone towers might have indicated that he was at. But none of those really panned out.
That would have made sense to me. I mean, if you have an area that you can control, to have something that can scent a dead body would be helpful. But hey, what do I know? I'm just what am I? What do we call ourselves?
Tom,
Papo.
on our show, we refer to ourselves as Papos. We are professional amateur podcast opinions.
Yes.
So.
Papo.
Oh, Papos.
Yes.
Papos, yeah. Professional amateur podcast opinions. And my Papo, I would have used a cadaver dog. I don't know. But hey.
Yeah, I know that was suggested at one point there, but you know, cadaver dogs, I think, you know, by the time they organized this plant thing, I think they would have been beyond the cadaver dog stage here, because it was more than 2 years past.
It was a long time after.
Yeah.
That's a part of it. It took so long. Evidence depletes over time. And
right. Right. They did spend some time out around his neck of the woods there, but you know, I don't think they were necessarily doing using dogs to follow any scent that he might have had out there.
Right.
That might have been fresh, and that would have been probably good in retrospect, or that. But you know, they missed out on that.
cover all bases. It's just that poor little baby. It's just devastating.
It is. Has this case impacted Ludington as a whole? Like, have there been any big changes or any repercussions from, baby Kate's disappearance?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question there. They haven't really done anything as far as legislatively, let's say there, as far as the local city or nothing, and that there. It has impacted the community fairly deeply there, because it kind of put us in a national spotlight there for 2011 for a little while, and so there hasn't really been too much different that's happened in the area. It hasn't really, I guess, impacted because of the lack of there is no resolution really in this particular thing. You don't have baby Kate's whereabouts known about, and you have someone in jail there, and jail for murder there, but you still are not totally certain that he's the murderer, if there was a murder, or if he wasn't just part of the scheming that went on for what happened.
Precisely. With no body, it's hard. Oy.
Right. Well, I think we're getting ready to wrap up this interview. I do have one last question for you, Tom. So, as far as amateur sleuths and true crime enthusiasts, our listeners, papos everywhere. As far as advice goes, where do you think a good starting point would be for our listeners and any amateur detectives or sleuthers, out there who want to kind of dive into this case and take it upon themselves to attempt to find baby Kate? What's a good starting point?
Well, I have, my aforementioned website there, the Langton Torch. We have a whole group there that's dedicated to the trail of baby Kate. I've had that going for the last 8 or 9 years there, and I have probably about 50 stories altogether on the various aspects of the case, where it was following the court, or whether it was doing some good old speculation, or was it looking at the actual evidence and looking at other things about the case. I might be biased, of course, that being my website, but there's also been fairly good stories in our local paper on it, the Langton Daily News, and you can also find several very comprehensive stories, if they still have the videos up, of the trial in some of the Grand Rapids TV sites.
Well, we wanted to say we will link that your site in our show notes, and really truly appreciate all the information that you have given to us with this case, and your time and dedication to baby Kate. It's tragic, and the kind of theme of this show is to shed light on missing children, or children that have gotten lost in the void, and this baby is definitely one of them. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for spotlighting the case there. It still is an unsolved crime there in its own way, and hopefully someday we can get some resolution, whether it's being an admission by Sean Phillips or someone else, or something that comes up here in the future that tells us what actually happened here.
Absolutely. I think it's what we all would hope for, right?
Right.
Alrighty, Tom. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was a pleasure getting to speak to you. And we hopefully look forward to hearing some good updates in the future regarding baby Kate's whereabouts.
So we're gonna link Tom to our show notes, and we're both gonna follow him and stay on top of this case, because we want to help too.
Definitely.
All right. The pleasure's mine. And if you do need any more, by the time you get to looking through what we've discussed today, if you have any more questions, or something that comes up that doesn't follow anybody else's records there, let me know if there's some contradicting points with anybody else you might be contacting on this. I'd be more than happy to, claim that either I was wrong or, I was definitely right.
That's what I like. Absolutely, Tom. Thank you so much. That's great.
Right. You're welcome. And thanks for your time.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
And with that, we are going to end the second episode
Of Children of the Void.
Good job, Michelle. I think that was really, really interesting. I learned some things I didn't know about that case for sure.
This case, in researching it was like an onion that sprouted more onions. As soon as you would start peeling away layers, there was just more and more to the story that led you in so many different directions. It literally was making my head spin. It's so complex and frustrating, and it just makes you wonder what's the reason why there's no clear answers. Like, because even during our conversation with Tom, your mind speculates and takes you down a number of different rabbit holes, and while none of them may be right, or one of them may have been the answer, there's just so much uncertainty around this case. And I think that's really why Baby Kate stands out in the void is it's such a short time frame for such an unclear situation.
Perfectly stated. But I'm glad we did the story. It's an older story, like we said, and she is still out there somewhere.
Right.
So, the purpose of this show is just exactly this. We hope you guys enjoyed. We hope you stick with us and catch us on our next show. Michelle, I appreciate you being here.
And I appreciate you, Rachel. And I appreciate our listeners as well. Again, if you guys know of any missing child cases or, unsolved missing, murder cases involving children who have potentially become subject of the void, definitely reach out to us.
Anything personal to you that you think you want to highlight, or interviews that you would like us to do, please let us know.
Right. Give it anything to help us come together, to help, dig deeper into the void and bring some babies home and bring some closure to some families who are definitely, missing someone.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful evening.
You too.
And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, you guys, for diving into the void with us.
Thank you.